think we're going to see interest rates continue to rise through this year. I do think we'll see a little bit of a slowing in the pace, though. We've seen 3 back-to-back 50 basis point increases in the last 3 months. I think we'll see slightly less of that. I think the RBA is going to, try to push this normality in monetary policy again. They'll see 25 basis points probably be the rate hike of choice towards the back end of this year. We see the cash rate sitting at about 2.6% by December and probably around 3% by the end of next year.
On the inflationary front, do you think that that's the upper limit, that 7.75? There's no prospect of an overshoot in that respect like we had seen previously?
Oh, look, it's the million-dollar question. I think the RBA has acknowledged that they've got that wrong over the last little bit. It really does depend on what happens outside Australia's borders. The data we got last week, the CPI data, showed that the goods and services in Australia, that prices really are determined by those things that happen overseas. That grew at 8% year on year in June. The domestic drivers, the goods and services where prices are more tied to what happens locally, that grew about 5%. So, it still depends largely on what happens overseas. If we see things worsen between with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, if we see China, continue to go into on again, off again, lockdown restrictions throughout the country. Those are things that certainly could impact where inflation sits. But I do think we're probably at the upper limit of where we see prices actually going, particularly as some of those drivers come off.
Okay, Harry, interesting thing. A lot of us want to go to Australia for a holiday. I'm looking at the Aussie. What's the direction like for the Aussie for me?
Well, I mean, we're sitting under 70 cents now compared to the US. I think that's probably where it'll sit for the next little bit. If we do see faster rate hikes from the Fed, that will obviously impact it. But I do think we're probably reasonably steady at about that 69 for the next little bit anyway.